Now, God had cleansed the earth at the time of the flood. All of paganism, all of Satan's worshippers, and all of Satan's false systems. He get straight back to work again because he was upset. Alright, so immediately he set up his religious systems at the time of Babylon and Babel, at the Tower of Babel. Mother and child worship, the worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars, infant Tammuz, and this was then spread around the whole world, as we've already looked at. God, in the nick of time, before Abraham completely got absorbed in all of this stuff, Abraham was still a remnant on the earth, and God plucked him out of Babylon and said, come with me, come to a promised land where I will bless you, and I'll bless the whole world through you, through the Messiah. The true Messiah must still come. So he took Abraham out of that paganism, almost in the nick of time. Yahweh calls Abraham out, and he promises him that he will bless all the world through his seed, and he'll build him a great nation. Now we read Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob married Rachel. We read in Genesis 31:19, and Laban went to shear his sheep, but Rachel had stolen the images, which is the idols, the right word is idols, that were her father's. Can you see how this is right in there with Abraham and his descendants and his basically his grandchild's wife was already involved with idolatry. So what I'm trying to say is that this kept on, Satan's trying to still get to the remnant. Those people that were sticking to the truth, Satan's still trying to get to them. The rest of the people, Satan's having a ball with in the world with all their pagan religions. But the true worship, where there's the remnant that God's working with, because God called Abraham as custodian of the truth all the way through, right until today, to reveal to the world the Creator, the true worship of the Creator God. We always see all the way through, it's littered with paganism. Egypt, we have the Israelites were in Egypt for 400 years, remember? At the time of the 10 plagues, just before the Exodus. Now, do you not think for those 400 years that the 12 tribes of Israel were not influenced by the Egyptians with their sun worship, Ra, etc.? We read in the Exodus, which happened 1400 before Christ, while they were still waiting for Moses to come down from the mountain. Yeah, they'd heard they'd seen all these wonders, they'd been through the Red Sea, the miracles every day with manna. They still think, oh well, Moses must be dead. So we'll build this, we'll make this golden calf. Friends, it's not a calf, it's not a cow that they're worshipping. You must understand, it's sun and moon worship, it's sex worship all over again. It's the male and the female symbols. There's a picture of what somebody's drawn. Okay, but they were dancing pretty much naked, etc. Some versions tell you. The Good News Bible, read that one. Exodus 32:6. But this is what they find. This is an artifact that's been dug up, a golden calf. So when they say golden calf all the way through the Bible, understand that it's sun and moon worship, because the sun and the moon rested on the cow. Okay, here's another one, Apis bull. Here's the crescent moon with the horns and the sun disk there, and the serpent in the middle. So you know who you're really worshipping when you bow down before that bull, don't you? All right. God warns. So they had this worship at the time of the giving at Sinai. 40 years in the wilderness. Now before they go from the wilderness into the promised land, God warns the people. Here we're going to cross the Jordan, we're going into the promised land. God gives a warning. What does he say? And in Deuteronomy the law was re-given and reiterated, and we went through it again just before you go into the promised land. When the Lord your God shall cut off the nations before you, whether you go to possess them, and thou succeedest them, and dwell in their land, take heed to yourself that you be not snared by following them, after that they be destroyed from before you, and that you inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations worship their gods? We will do likewise. Okay. And so, the God commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them in the land whether you go over to possess it. Take ye therefore good heed to yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude in the day that the Lord spoke to you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire. There was no image that you saw. There was no image. When we make images, graven images, we're bringing God down into something that we can see and limiting him. Lest you corrupt yourselves and make your graven image the lack of anything male or female. And here's the thing. Lest you lift up your eyes into heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars and even the whole host of heaven, should be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. So God's warning, watch out when you go into the promised land, watch out that you don't start worshipping the sun and the moon and the stars again. We read straight away in the book of Judges, they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtoreth. Male and female fertility symbols, the sun and the moon all over again. Okay, and so they followed the cycle. It was a continual cycle of apostasy, and they went into captivity, and they were exiled, or not exiled, but they went to slavery, and they were oppressed. God raised up a judge, and there was revival and reformation. They put away the false gods. Things went well. They came out of deliverance from captivity. They went back to God's law, and they had a period of peace and tranquility and safety until that leader died, and then they'd get a false leader again, and they'd go back into apostasy. Why? Because they kept on getting influenced from the outside religions, the outside of the world, the nations around them. So the story of Israel is just a continual story of the same thing over and over again. All right. Eventually, it becomes so bad that God says, I'm going to allow my nation to be disciplined and to go into captivity, to learn a lesson. So they went 70 years into captivity, into Babylon. Now, why the captivity? I mean, this was serious. This was, Solomon's temple was completely flattened. The gold was scraped off the temple. The people were mutilated and killed, and the city walls destroyed. Why would God allow such a devastating thing to happen? We read, friends, and these are great books to read. Jeremiah, Lamentation, and Ezekiel are all talking about the same event, the fall of Jerusalem, and why. And we go and we can find all the clues. What is it that made God so upset that they needed to be disciplined, and how bad was the worship at that time? We read in Jeremiah 10. Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cuts a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman and the axe, and they deck it with silver and with gold, and they fasten it with nails, so that it doesn't fall over, that it moves not. Now, what do? They cut down a tree, they give it legs so that it doesn't fall over, and they deck it with gold and silver. This is something that we read in Jeremiah at the time of the fall of Jerusalem that the Israelites were doing. Now, this is exactly what we read just now from a historical record, that Semiramis was saying that Nimrod would come back to earth and put gifts under this tree. Isn't that what he said? Could they be linked? Well, of course they could be linked, because this is what they're involved with. This is what God says. Learn not the way of the heathen. This is the way that the heathens are doing it, and obviously the Israelites are doing the same thing. Learn not the way of the heathen. Counterfeit religion. Sorry, false messiah. What does that star mean at the top there? Does that mean that Nimrod went up to the stars, remember, and became the sun? The Queen of Heaven is the summary of all of these religions, because remember, the husband went out of the picture. She's a fertility goddess. In ancient times it was Ishtar, which became Ashtar and Easter. In the New Testament, in Acts, we read about Diana of Ephesus. You see, she's a fertility symbol. There's the Tower of Babel on her head, with a sun disk behind her, and many, many breasts, multiple breasts, sign of fertility in the front part of her chest there. And where did we get this idea from? Where did we get the idea of a bunny girl? It's the same thing. It's a female fertility symbol. That a bunny, meaning fertility, and the sex symbol that has now become Playboy magazine, all these things. Where do you think the bunny and the rabbit came from? It's exactly the same thing. What on earth are we as Christians giving Easter eggs to people? Nonsense. Now have a look at this. A circle with a cross in the center is a divine symbol of the Canaanite sun god. We read that just now. What? Could that be true? Let's have a look. In Hosea, Now Hosea is a prophet, and again at a time when Israel was playing the harlot with God and listening to other goddesses, shall I say, other gods, and leaving the true God. She was playing the harlot. She wasn't staying loyal to her God, her husband. So God called Hosea, and he said, Hosea, I want you to marry a prostitute so that you can know what it's like to be God of Israel, the husband of this wife. Then the Lord said to me, let's read on, go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who took other gods, so Israel took other gods, and loved the flagons of wine. What on earth is that? We read it, another translation in the scriptures. Again, it makes more sense. For the children of Israel, though they are turning to other mighty ones, or gods, they love their raisin cakes. Why would God put it in there? That here's this adulterous wife of mine and puts in raisin cakes. It must have been a religious practice that was involved with worshipping certain of these gods or goddesses. The Young's literal translation of that same verse says here, the sons of Israel, and they are turning to other gods and are lovers of grape cakes. So grape cakes, raisin cakes, there's something was involved, grape cakes involved with worship. Oh, there we go. I wonder if the Christmas grape cake or the hot cross raisin bun has got anything to do with these two things, because remember they're lock and key. The Easter and Christmas work together because of the fertility symbol, 9 months apart. Now we read in Jeremiah 10, the children gather wood, the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to bake and to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven. So there's your answer. These raisin cakes, these flagons of wine, these grape cakes are involved with worship of the fertility goddess. Queen of Heaven, Semiramis, goddess of fertility, friends, rabbits and Easter eggs, etc., all pagan. Okay? We shouldn't be involved with this stuff. Counterfeit. Not scriptural. Ezekiel 8. God took Ezekiel in vision, and he showed him all the sins of the people. Again, remember? Jeremiah, Lamentations, and Ezekiel. Read those 3 books about why Jerusalem fell to Babylon. And God showed more and more things, sins. In verse 13, he said to me, turn yet again, and they shall see great abominations that they do. And he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, the temple, which was towards the north. And behold, there sat woman weeping for Tammuz. The weeping for Tammuz, remember Tammuz died. Semiramis says that she cried, and those tears regenerated the sun in evergreen tree. Wow. Counterfeit Messiah. Remember, she said that this is the promised seed of the woman. Tammuz is a counterfeit woman, and Israel was involved with that worship. And they then worship the sun, which is the counterfeit creator God. See how they go hand in glove? Everything fitting together nicely here now. It's all counterfeits, friends. Judah was immersed in idolatry and paganism, including Easter, which was Queen of Heaven worship, Christmas, or evergreen tree, and weeping for Tammuz, sun worship, etc. All counterfeit religion. False worship, worshipping the false Messiah. If it originated in paganism, it is unacceptable to Yahweh. Remember what we read earlier? You should not add to it, and you should not take away from it. So how can we get involved with these systems? The issue of birthday celebrations. People say, but I love to just give lots of gifts, and that's a very nice thing. Friends, this concept of birthdays is not something you're going to find in the Bible. Let's just have a look here. There's a book called The Trouble with Christmas. To the early Christians, the idea of celebrating the birthday of a religious figure would have seemed to be best peculiar and at worst blasphemous. Why? Because what happened was all the pagans worshipped the birthdays of their gods. Those were high days, okay? Here we read it here, The Trouble with Christmas. The New Testament world, because they attach significance to the birthdays of their pagan gods, all right, and supernatural figures.